Welcome back. My name is Steve Kirby. Freedom of speech is guaranteed in the United States. When it comes to Muhammad, however, there is no freedom of speech in Islam. Muhammad did not like to be criticized. In fact, he personally ordered the killing of a number of non-Muslims simply because they had criticized or mocked him. For example, in September 624 AD, Muhammad ordered the killing of Ka'b bin al-Ashraf, a Jewish poet in Medina who had criticized Muhammad. After Ka'b was killed, Muhammad stated that a similar fate would befall anyone else who insulted him. After Ka'b was killed, the Jews and the polytheists among them were alarmed. They came to the Prophet when it was morning and said, "Our companion, who was one of our lords, was murdered treacherously with no crime or incident by him that we know of." The messenger of God replied, "If he had remained as others of similar opinion remained, he would not have been killed treacherously. But he hurt us and insulted us with poetry, and one does not do this among you, but he shall be put to the sword." Ka'b would not have been killed if he had remained silent, and a Jewish woman was strangled with Muhammad's approval after the fact because she also would not remain silent. It was narrated from Ali that a Jewish woman used to revile and disparage the Prophet. A man strangled her until she died, and the messenger of Allah declared that no recompense was payable for her blood. Muhammad also killed poets in Mecca because of what they had written about him. This was mentioned in a letter written after the Muslim conquest of Mecca in 630 AD. The letter was sent to a poet who used to satirize Muhammad from the poet's brother. Allah's messenger killed some men in Mecca who used to satirize and harm him, and the poets who survived fled in all directions for their lives. So if you want to save your skin, hasten to Allah's messenger. He never kills those who come to him repenting. If you refuse to do as I say, it is up to you to try to save your skin by any means. After further correspondence between the brothers, the poet traveled to Medina, converted to Islam, and was forgiven by Muhammad. So insulting Muhammad with poetry or satire, or simple criticism of him, was a death sentence. Are Muhammad's teachings relevant today? Keep these Quran verses in mind. The Quran states that Muhammad spoke for Allah. All Muslims are to follow Muhammad's timeless teachings and commands, and Muhammad is the timeless model in all of his actions for Muslims. So these teachings of Muhammad are not limited to 7th century Arabia, as shown by the following. In 2005, cartoons about Muhammad in a Danish newspaper caused destruction and death in parts of the Middle East because there were Muslims who said that these cartoons denigrated Muhammad and ridiculed Islam. And there were repeated attempts by Muslims on the life of Kurt Vestergaard, the cartoonist responsible for those drawings. The Cartoons That Shook the World. This is the title of a book published in 2009 about those Danish cartoons. The book's publisher, Yale University Press in New Haven, Connecticut, agreed to publish the book, but only if none of the Danish cartoons or any other illustrations of Muhammad were included in the book. The author reluctantly agreed. John Donatich, the director of Yale University Press, explained that the decision to exclude the cartoons and illustrations of Muhammad was difficult. But, he said, when it came between that and blood on my hands, there was no question. Yale University Press was obeying the 7th century teachings of Muhammad. In 2010, the American satirical cartoon series, South Park, had an episode in which Muhammad appeared dressed in a bear costume. Because of threats of violence from a group called Revolution Muslim, that section of the cartoon was edited to remove any appearance of or reference to Muhammad wearing a bear costume. In 2010, Molly Norris was the editorial cartoonist for the Seattle Weekly in Seattle, Washington. Inspired by the South Park incident, she came up with the idea of having an Everybody Draw Muhammad Day because of death threats from people who claimed to be Muslims and from a particular Muslim named Anwar al-Awlaki. And on the advice of the FBI, Molly Norris changed her name and went into hiding. She has not reappeared. In 2011, a French weekly satirical newspaper named Charlie Hebdo ran an edition with a cover page showing a cartoon of Muhammad and that the newspaper's name had been changed to Sharia Hebdo. The office of the newspaper was firebombed. Nevertheless, in September 2012, the newspaper again published satirical cartoons of Muhammad. Police went on alert in Paris and guarded the newspaper's office. The French government ordered the closure of French embassies, schools, and cultural centers in 20 Muslim countries on the next Friday, the Muslim Day of Prayer. The satirical cartoons of Muhammad continued to be published, and on January 7, 2015, two Muslim brothers went into the offices of Charlie Hebdo and shot and killed 11 people, including a police officer. These two gunmen then killed another police officer outside the offices. 2 days later, when the two gunmen were cornered in a building by French security forces, one of the brothers had a telephone interview with a reporter from a French television station. The brother told the reporter, "We defend the Prophet. If someone offends the Prophet, then there is no problem. We can kill him." Words right out of 7th century Arabia. The brothers were subsequently killed by French security forces. 6 months later, the editor of Charlie Hebdo said they would no longer draw cartoons of Muhammad. On May 3, 2015, Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller hosted the Muhammad Art Exhibit and Contest in Garland, Texas, at which drawings of Muhammad were judged. Two heavily armed Muslims, who had reportedly pledged allegiance to the leader of the jihadist group ISIS, arrived outside the location and a gun battle ensued. Both Muslims were shot and subsequently died. The only other casualty was an unarmed security guard who was wounded in the ankle. Some in the mainstream American media labeled the exhibit as hateful and provocative. Muhammad would have been pleased. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees freedom of speech. Islam does not allow freedom of speech, even in the United States. And 10 years later, Molly Norris is still in hiding. In the next video, we will look at the conflict between Islam and the First Amendment guarantee of freedom of speech. I encourage you to post this video series on social media and tell your friends and conservative groups about these videos. Thank you, and I look forward to being with you again soon.